Welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. I'm Lonnie Goldsmith, the editor of TC Jewfolk, and today we are joined by Emma Dunn, the Twin Cities Young Adult Engagement Manager for the Minneapolis and St. Paul Jewish Federations. Emma and I talk about her journey to Judaism, what engagement means to her, and some upcoming young adult leadership action programs that she's starting on this week's Who the Folk podcast. Emma Dunn, welcome to this week's Who the Folk podcast. We are very glad to finally be able to connect and get you in here.
Thank you. I'm excited.
So you are the program manager for the Young Adult Leadership Action, Yalla, as it's more commonly known, a program that is jointly held between the St. Paul and Minneapolis Jewish Federations. Tell everyone a little bit about what the program is and what you do there.
Great. So Yalla is the Young Adult Engagement Program of the Federations, and it's a hub for young Jewish life and leadership in the Twin Cities. We help young Jews connect, travel, create, and lead in any way they're seeking meaning and connection. And this includes a variety of programs and opportunities for younger Jews, including a few programs I operate locally.
So you recently, fairly recently-ish, took the position. You finished your graduate studies at the U. And what was it about the opportunity that was really appealing to you? Because you and I have known each other for a few years now. And so I was sort of sensed you were maybe on a little more political public policy kind of track. What was, is this a sort of left turn away from that, or is there still some connection to that area?
The deep relevance I feel in this position is the community engagement work I'm doing, which has always grounded my passion for policy and politics in a sense. But through my Master's of Public Policy at the Humphrey School, I was focusing a lot on engagement work and representation and how I could inspire and make sure everyone has a voice at the table. As you know, and alluded to, I was still involved in Jewish community work outside of my studies and already felt really compelled to be a volunteer. And I was volunteering on the Jewish Identity and Engagement Committee of the Federation, which allocates funding to a number of agencies dealing with those areas. And I was really I was inspired by the opportunity through Yalla to make a dent and to make a really big impact to bring younger voices into the conversation now as leaders today. We often talk about young adults as future leaders, but it's very clear to me that we have young adults that are current leaders, and they deserve to be heard and supported.
And even before Federation, so where I first met you was your work at Hillel and working closely with student government at the U and with leadership in Hillel. What first led you to getting involved at Hillel?
I started getting involved at Hillel sometime during my freshman year when my roommate brought me with her when she was leading services. I didn't grow up Jewish. I wasn't Jewish at the time, but I really felt a spark of connection, not only in Friday night services and dinners and this idea of being surrounded by people who share common values and purpose, but also, just inspired and compelled by the community that Hillel creates. I've been on a Jewish journey since then, really, and today I really consider myself a student of Minnesota Hillel and consider Benji Kaplan and the staff there to be very impactful mentors to me in terms of how relational engagement works and how you cultivate really deep, meaningful friendships and lasting relationships with people. And that, for me, is that's my Judaism I live every day, is how do I impact people and empower them to be their best selves, and using our Jewish values and our unique community opportunities to help them do that.
So you mentioned that you weren't Jewish at the time. You have been now since May?
May.
So
took the plunge.
So about 7 months now. What was, plenty of people can be connected and they could go to Hillel for Shabbat when they're students, but not necessarily go through the conversion process. Why was it important to you to take that step and, like you said, take the plunge?
I was really intentional when I was making the decision to convert, and I took my time. I knew I wanted to be a part of the Jewish community now for years. And for me, I wanted to go through the process at a conservative synagogue because I felt the most resonance with that movement. And I knew I wanted to take their 8-month, 9-month class at a time where I could give my full heart and head. And so I waited until I was a graduate student. Doesn't seem to really make sense, but I had cut down on my extracurriculars that I had done in undergrad and had more time to add another class to my load. And it was an incredibly meaningful class. I was able to do it with my longtime partner, Sammy Rachamim, and learn from others in the class, learn from 3 rabbis in town. So for me, this was intentional. This was deliberate because I want to live my life with the values and the meaning that I find in Judaism.
Now, how does your family, when you told them that this was what you were going to do, how did they take it?
They support me. They love me. They're excited for the passion and the spark they see in me. Not only personally, but now professionally as I'm working in the Jewish community. And they want me to bring them to Israel, many of them.
That's great. So they've been willing students from you in this? You've been teaching them, at least some, you've been talking to them about some of what you do and what the Jewish community means to you and is here in the Twin Cities?
Absolutely. Much of my extended family is in the cities, and I see them often. And both sides of my family are not particularly religious, but they're absolutely driven by my same values of serving other people, of being together in community. And I think they see, that's what I'm bringing to the Jewish community too.
So one of the things you mentioned is about engaging and trying to find sort of the future leaders and helping them become sort of today, instead of just future, like today, bring them in now. And I think this is sort of the $64,000 question for federations everywhere is how do you find them? Like how do you bring people to the table that haven't been or maybe, didn't know they wanted to be at the table?
We are incredibly fortunate to have a number of vibrant young adult organizations in the Twin Cities, new and older, or initiatives to reach out to newcomers to the cities, to offer meaningful opportunities for younger adults who've grown up here and continue to live here or have returned after a few years. And so my work through Yalla is oftentimes supporting their work, and then also doing, in my own role, outreach at the grassroots level of meeting people for coffee or helping connect them not only to institutions that they find meaningful, but also to other individuals who might be able to help them professionally or personally. Through a mini grant program Yalla runs, I also help people create their own opportunities, which I think does a great service for our outreach and engagement work by allowing people to create community or create meaning through their own project, supported financially by a mini grant, and then finding their own way from there.
And I think that's really important because community, it's, I think, often a loaded word.
Sure.
But
and there's actually no synonyms to community.
Really?
Correct.
I hadn't even
thought about that. We pulled out the dictionary of synonyms at the office, and so when we say community, it really can't be replaced. I mean,
but it means so many different things. There's no one definition for any of us. The way you would see and define it is very different, potentially, for me, for the next person who comes in, their kids. Like, it's different. It's unique to everybody. So, how do the mini grants sort of help? The mini grants, for example, because you mentioned those, to sort of foster those or individual communities that are part of the, the larger whole.
Exactly. You've hit the nail on the head in that sense of our role is also in cultivating micro communities for people because, we don't want to create this world where there's a tent or a limit to who's in and who's out. We want to create a world where people can find meaning and access resources easily because we've been able to touch them in some way. The mini grants are one example of how Yalla can help people create that own sense of community. I also want to connect them to other resources, institutions, professionals that can help them find their own way. And I think technology is a game changer. We're able to cultivate connection in many new ways. And it's exciting to think of the ways that we can continue to use technology to build out our community, but also find innovative and exciting ones.
And one of the programs that I know started out of Yalla microgrant was Heritage Judaica.
Correct.
Talking about technology, it is an online virtual trading hub on Facebook.
Includes in-person pop-ups.
There are in-person pop-ups, but it largely started and continues to run as just a Facebook group.
Correct.
For people who have extra Judaica that they don't want to throw out or send to Goodwill, but they want to pass on to somebody, in a meaningful way.
Exactly.
So that's a great, and we talked to Adam on the podcast about I think a year ago or so, and he's great. He's a fascinating guy, Adam Schwartz, who started it, and it's his brainchild, and it's growing to other cities. But it started here, and it started thanks to one of these grants.
Yep, it started, and I would also credit 248 Community Action Network, which is a program of the Partnership Together, for helping Adam be able to spread his ideas around the globe. It's a network of Jewish doers. I'm heading to Israel next week with our current cohort, and being able to see the kind of how much potential Adam's idea has for equipping other communities with modes of connection and modes of addressing a real issue that a lot of people didn't realize existed.
Right.
But once you think about it, it becomes very clear that it's an easy way to fill a gap.
Until you've, packed up a house or you don't really think of, something like that. You don't really think about that.
Right.
That there's this, you don't want to throw out, this menorah or this Seder plate or, you have no use for these things. If a loved one passes away, what do you can't throw them out, but you don't know what to do with them. So.
And something I'm personally passionate about is how it's an initiative that helps the needs of people more on the margins of our community, whether they converted to Judaism or didn't grow up with much of a Jewish identity or connection and now are seeking it, or that tragedy strikes and you lose items that are meaningful to your ritual practice. So I think it's a kind of a great example that you picked out. There are many grant projects, but Heritage Judaica is particularly compelling, I think, right now in our moment.
And I picked that one out only because I know it from having talked to Adam. For those of you listening, I'm not trying to slight anyone else. I'm sure all of the other projects are really interesting, for sure. You mentioned you're leading a group to Israel, though.
Correct.
Coming up. You may be there by the time when this airs, actually. But I guess, what are some of the projects that are upcoming that maybe the community should have on their radar that are really interesting?
Stay tuned.
Okay.
Participants
Excellent.
just started what is primarily a webinar-based program designed to educate, inspire around the idea of creating an initiative in your community that will address a need. But participants are going to use Israel Week, which will spend partly in Rehovot, Minneapolis' sister city, and partly in the Galilee doing workshops and brainstorming and feedback sessions on their ideas so that they'll be able to figure out an idea that is replicable and easy enough to create and implement using community resources. That's essential, but also a small enough bite off of many of our challenges.
What is it about going to Israel that sort of for that week that really helps draw out and come up with some of these ideas?
It's all about a network. There will be people from Minneapolis and Cleveland, two Israeli cities, Poland and Hungary, as well as partnership together professionals, other Israeli leaders. The invite's really open to anyone who wants to come for the main event is the Udathon Day, where it's tons of workshops and sessions and kind of a Shark Tank-like atmosphere for people that want to pitch their idea. So it's kind of the resource that technology enables initially through the webinars, but it really deepens it when you're able to sit across from someone and talk about what you care about, hear back your idea from them and get feedback and ideas and hearing from other communities, whether they're facing similar challenges and opportunities or if there's something different that maybe we didn't consider. Because our community is unique in some aspects as
Absolutely.
well.
So one of the other things you mentioned that's coming down the pike pretty soon is the Yalla Leadership Series. For starters, what is the Yalla Leadership Series?
So I'm thrilled to be embarking on this adventure for Yalla, which the idea was first planted by my predecessor in the role, Charlie Smith, to provide educational content and equip younger leaders with tools to start to plug in and get started on leadership opportunities in the Twin Cities. The leadership series will be launching in February. It'll be a mini-series, so 5 sessions, and including a Shabbaton at Herzl Camp.
Oh, fun.
And we'll start to just dig in on what does our local Jewish community look like, what are some personal leadership skills, what are our experiences that impact how we're a leader or what our goals are or what our strengths are. There'll be a board member boot camp if you're interested in board leadership, kind of what does it take to be a board member. We'll do some activities there. And then additional content on leadership and as well as an introduction to the Federation. And we'll be at various locations around the Twin Cities, including some Jewish agencies, and we'll have a chance to do hands-on work at the agencies. This is a really exciting project. It's no application. Come to the first session in February. See if you like it. It's a little taste test. And if you do, you can commit to the rest of the series. And it's a low program fee of $100.
Okay. And there's dates and everything set?
Yes.
All right. Well, everything will be on the TC JUFO calendar. We will link to it in the show notes so you can find out more about it. But
Absolutely.
that sounds like a really
Yes.
cool opportunity. And as somebody who was probably too young when I served on a board for the first time, a board member boot camp would have been amazing.
Great.
Back then. So it's I super useful, I'm sure.
So follow, check it out on TC JUFO as well as we'll be launching all the information within the next week. So you can check out Yalla Twin Cities Facebook and Instagram to see that as well.
Well, that sounds like an amazing opportunity for people that want to find their niche of how to get involved. If that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, if it's your passion, if you want to plug in, then we want to give you the tools to do it.
All right. Well, that sounds fantastic. Last couple questions. Favorite Jewish food?
So this is a tough one.
Okay.
I'm going to go with challah French toast on a Sunday morning. Because
wait,
it's
you
the
have
perfect
challah that
time,
makes it to Sunday?
Because it has to be a little bit stale.
Yeah. Okay.
But we also make a lot of hummus in our house. That's not hummus that you buy at the store. That's homemade. Big Israeli food fans. Persian food we also make in the house. So, like I said, a tough one.
Okay, that's fair. Can you share a good hummus recipe? I cook a lot. I have not gone down that path yet.
So the easiest is the 5-minute hummus recipe in Zahav cookbook.
Oh, okay.
Really easy, just canned chickpeas. But if you want to go the real deal, you soak chickpeas overnight.
Yeah.
You cook them for hours because overcooked chickpeas make the best hummus. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna have to try that then. That sounds awesome. And favorite Jewish holiday?
I'm going to go with Pesach.
Okay.
obvious. I should need no explanation because who doesn't love eating matzah, which is actually probably my least favorite part of the holiday. But I do.
It's everybody's least favorite part of the holiday.
But I do really love, coming together, having a meaningful, traditional, rooted in history and I guess an obligation for action at the two Seders, and then something that brings us all together throughout the week. And as you can tell, I like to cook, so I really like to meal prep for Passover too.
Well, that sounds awesome. Well, Emma Dunn, thank you very much. Hope your trip to Israel is amazing, and we're very excited for everything you've got building in this next year for Yalla.
Thanks. Yalla, bye.
The Who the Folk podcast is a product of Jew Folk Inc. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, and review the show. If you have a suggestion of someone who should be on the show, please email me at editor@tcjewfolk.com. Also, go to tcjewfolk.com/podcast to listen to our new shows, We Won, Let's Eat, the Jewish Food Podcast, and The Jews Are Tired, a weekly recap of Jewish news through an analytical lens. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.